Welcome to another Christmas theme tutorial. So in this one, we're going to be creating this stylized Christmas ball ornament in Blender. So we will be 3D modeling the stylized Christmas ornament, and then all of the materials will be procedural. And this result looks very similar in both Cycles and Eevee, so you can use whichever render engine you want. I'm going to be using Cycles to get more realism, but you could totally use Eevee as well. If you'd like to help support the channel and purchase the project files, you can get that on my Gumroad store and my Patreon page with the links in the description. And also, before we start, I wanted to let you know about my customizable Christmas lights created with geometry nodes. So I've created a geometry node setup which creates Christmas lights on a curve object. And so you can edit the curve object and extrude the curve object, and the Christmas lights are going to adapt with the curve. And the geometry nodes also have a bunch of different customizable settings. And as well as that, the material also has a bunch of custom presets for the colors. If you'd like to purchase the geometry node Christmas lights, I'll have a link in the description where you can purchase on my Gumroad store and the Blender market, and you can also get access to it on my Patreon page. And if you'd like to learn how to create the Christmas lights yourself, you can check out the full tutorial with the link in the description. And if you're looking for more Christmas themed Blender tutorials, then definitely check out my Christmas Blender tutorial playlist. Now, to get some nice realistic lighting and reflections, I'm going to be using this Christmas Photo Studio 01, and this is a free HDRI from polyhaven.com. I'll have the link in the description. So I'm going to be downloading the 1K HDR version, and then you can just download this. And we'll be adding this into the world to help us get some nice lighting. Alright, here I am in Blender, and my screencast keys are right down here in the corner so you can see what buttons I'm pressing. So I'm going to start by pressing the A key to select everything. I'll then hit X, and let's click on delete. So I'm now going to press Shift A, and let's go here to mesh, and I'm going to start by adding a UV sphere. And then I want to model this much closer to the real life scale in Blender, and the default primitive objects in Blender are about the size of an average human. So what I'm going to do is hit S to scale, then I'm going to type in 0.1 and then enter. And that way it's going to be much closer to a real Christmas light. Then I want to apply the scale, so this is now the object's new default scale. So press Ctrl A and you can click on scale. And you can press the period on the numpad to zoom into the object. Let's now save the Blender file, so you can press Ctrl S or go File and click on Save As. And I'm going to save this as Stylized Ornament on my computer, and I'll click on Save As. And then you can just press Ctrl S as you're working on the project to save the Blender file. I also don't need the timeline, so I'm going to get rid of it. So I'm going to hover my mouse right here when the crosshair appears in the corner of the timeline, and I can click and then drag up and then drag down and let go, and that'll close the timeline. So I now want to add a subdivision surface modifier so that this sphere has more geometry. So to do that, you can press Ctrl 1, and it's the Ctrl 1, the one on top of your keyboard, not the numpad one. So press Ctrl 1, or you can just go over here to the modifier properties, and you can click on Add Modifier, and you can add the subdivision surface modifier. And then right here on the viewport and render levels, I'm just going to both set these to 1, and then here in the 3D viewport, I'm going to use the object context menu to shade the object smooth. And I use the right click select, so I hit the W key for the object context menu, but you can just right click and then click on shade smooth. So I now want to add that little metal ring which is around the Christmas ornament. So I will press the tab key to go into edit mode, and I'm going to click right up here to go to the face select. Then I'm going to press the A key to deselect everything, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key and I will select right there, and that is going to select the rings of faces. So I'm going to select this one here, so it's the one right in the center, but it's the top ring of faces. Then I want to duplicate this, so I'll press Shift D to duplicate. Then I'm going to hit S to scale, and I'm going to scale this up a bit more and place it there. Then I want to make this its own object, so I'm going to press the P key, and then I can click on selection. So this way the selection will be its own object. So I can press tab to go back to object mode, and then I can just select the ring and press tab to go into edit mode. I now want to give it some thickness, so I'll press the A key to select everything, and I'm going to press E to extrude, but then I want to scale this in, so I'll hit S to scale. Now I don't want to scale it on the Z axis because the Z z-axis is up and down. I do want to scale it on the x and the y though, but not the z. So I'm going to press Shift Z. This way it'll just scale it on the x and y, but not the z. So it's going to exclude the z-axis. So I'm going to scale this down and just like place it there. Now we also need to recalculate the normals because you can see the shading looks a bit off. So press the A key to select everything, and you can press Shift N to recalculate the normals. And then I also want to mirror this on the z-axis so that there's another one below it. So let's click on Add Modifier, and under Generate, I'm going to add the Mirror Modifier. And then here on the Mirror Modifier settings, we want to turn off the x-axis, and we instead want to turn on the z-axis, and this will mirror it up and down. And then also if you zoom in, you can see it's kind of getting merged in the center there. If I tab to go back to object mode, you can see it's getting merged. So here on the Mirror Modifier, I'm going to uncheck the merge, and that way it won't be connected. So I can go back into edit mode. And you can also see if you look here on the edge, you can see that it's not very round. So right here on the subsurf modifier, I'm going to turn the levels viewport and render both up to 2 so that it is more subdivided. Now I want to make it sharper on the edges, so I'm going to press Ctrl R to add a loop cut. I can left click and then drag up and left click again to place that. And then I can press Ctrl R to add another loop cut, and I can left click, drag down, and bring it pretty close, but not all the way down, just pretty close, and then click again to place it. So that's going to sharpen up that edge there, so you can see it is much more of a sharp edge. And back in edit mode, I'm going to press the A key to select everything, and I want to scale the whole thing down a bit, so I'll hit S to scale, bring that down, place it there. I can also scale the entire thing down on the Z-axis a little bit, so it's not quite as tall, and then press G to grab and bring it down on the Z-axis a little bit. So something like that is better. So I now want to create kind of a little cap on the top and the bottom. So let's do that. So I'm going to go back to object mode, and then I'm going to select this sphere here. And I'll press the tab key to go into edit mode. So I'm going to click right here to go to the face select. And then what I'm going to do is press B for the box select. And I'm first going to drag a box around the top faces and let go just to select those faces. Then I want to select the rings of faces, but I want to keep these faces selected. So I'm going to hold down the Shift and Alt key and select that ring of faces, and Shift Alt select that ring of faces. So there are 3 rings of faces. So I can now press Shift D to duplicate. Let's bring this up on the Z-axis and place it there. And then I want to press the P button, and we want to click on Selection. So this way the selection will be its own object. So I can tab to go back to object mode. I can select the cap object here, and then tab to go back into edit mode. And then I also want to mirror it so that there is another one down here on the bottom. So I'm going to click on Add Modifier, and under Generate, let's add the Mirror Modifier. And then again, I want to turn off the X-axis, and I instead want to turn on the Z-axis. So now you can see it's mirroring down there on the bottom. So I now want to zoom in here, and I'm going to click right up here to go back to the vertex select. And then I'm going to hold down the Alt key and select that loop of vertices there, so the outer ring. I can press E to extrude, then I can hit Z, bring it down on the Z-axis and stick it there. And then I want to press the A key to select everything, and I'll press G to grab, and let's bring this down on the Z-axis, bring it down there so it's a bit farther down. You could even scale it down on the Z-axis a little bit if you want it to be a bit more flat. And then I want to make this part right here a bit more sharp because it is very round. So in edit mode, I can press Ctrl R, and I can left click and then drag this up a bit and then left click again. So now that is a bit sharper. And I could select everything and maybe bring it a little bit more down on the Z-axis. So I now want to go right back here to the face select. You can also press the 3 on the top of your keyboard to go to the face select. I'll press the A key to deselect everything, and then I can hit B for the box select, and I'm just going to box select these top faces here. And I want to extrude them up. So I'm going to hit E to extrude and just bring that up and scale it down a little bit. And I can also scale it on the Z-axis just to flatten it a bit more. And then I want to add a loop cut in here to sharpen it. So I'm going to press Ctrl R. I can left click, drag down, left click to place that. And then I can press Ctrl R and left click, drag in, and left click again to place that. And then I think this whole cap thing could be a little bit smaller. So I'm going to press 3 on the top of my keyboard or click right here to go to the face select. I can hold down the Alt key, select that loop of faces, and then hold down the Shift and Alt key and select that loop of faces. I can hit the S key to scale, and then I don't want to scale it on the Z-axis because I don't want to scale it up and down, so I'm going to hit Shift Z. That will exclude the Z-axis, and I can just make that a bit smaller and place it there. So go back to object mode, and I think that looks pretty good. Now I want to apply the mirror modifier because I actually want this bottom part here to not have this little bump here. I just want it to be smooth because this top part up here, we're going to be adding a little ring, and that's where you could like attach a string and hang it onto a Christmas tree. So in object mode, with this object selected here, I can go to the mirror and I can click on the drop down here, and I can click on apply, or the shortcut key is Control A with your mouse hovered over the modifier. So now that it's applied, if I tab to go into edit mode, you can see it is both geometry. So I'm going to zoom in here to the bottom, and then I want to press the 1 on the top of my keyboard to go to the vertex select. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and select that loop of vertices, and then hold down the Shift and Alt key and select that loop of vertices, and then just hold down the Shift key and select that vertex there in the center. I can press the X key, and we want to delete the vertices. So I can now hold down the Alt key and select that ring of vertices there, and I can press the S key to scale it a bit more down, and then I can press the F key, and that is going to fill a face. So I can tab to go back to object mode, and that is looking really good. Let's press Ctrl S to save. So let's now add the ring object, which is on the top here. So I'm going to press Shift C. Shift C will make sure the 3D cursor is in the very center. So I can now press Shift A, and I'm going to go to Mesh, and I'm going to add a torus. And I'm going to zoom out here so I can see it. And because the 3D cursor was in the center, the torus is added in the center of the 3D viewport. Now before you move the torus around, right behind me there's that little add torus arrow. You can just click on that to open it up to see the settings. And we're going to change the settings. So on the major segments here, I'm going to turn this to 24 because I don't want it to be quite as detailed. And then right here on the minor segments, I can just turn this to like an 8. So that is a bit better. And then here on the minor radius, I can hold down the Shift key and I can drag this, and you can see it's going to be thinner. So I'm going to turn the minor radius to a 0.1, and now we have a nice thin ring. So I can now click on this arrow here to minus the add torus settings, and using the object context menu, let's shade this object smooth. And then it is a little bit rough on the edges, so I want to give it a subdivision surface modifier. So I'm going to press Control 1 will add the subdivision surface. But right here on the levels and viewport, I will turn these both up to 2 so it is very smooth. And then I can scale this object way down because it's much too big. I can kind of zoom in here, and then I can bring this object up on the Z-axis, bring it up like that, and then I want to rotate it over, so I'll hit R to rotate, and I want to hit X to rotate it on the X-axis, and I can rotate it back a bit. And then I can bring it up on the Z-axis, and I want to scale it down even more so it's quite a bit smaller, and I'm also going to press G to grab, bring it back on the Y-axis and bring it over there, and I could scale it down even more and then bring it down on the Z-axis. And so I just want to have that ring so that it is going in that little spot there. And I also want to have it slightly rotated back. I think it's pretty cool if the ring is just slightly rotated back. Maybe even scale the whole thing down a little bit more and then bring it down. So that is pretty good. Let's press Ctrl S to save. So now let's create that little star object, which is going to be on the front of the ornament. So again, I'm going to press Shift C. Shift C is going to center the 3D cursor to the center of the scene, and I can press Shift A, and let's go to Mesh, and for the star, I'm actually going to add a circle. And then I'm going to zoom out here so I can see the circle, and then again, right behind me, you can click on the Add Circle settings right after you add the circle. So right here on the vertices, I want to make it lower topology, so I'm going to turn the vertices to 10, and 10 will be great for the star. And then I can click here to close the add circle settings. And I'm going to press the 7 on the numpad to go to top view, and I can press the tab key to go into edit mode. So what I'm going to do is select this vertex here, and then I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select this one here. Then I'm going to skip these next two, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select this one here and this one here, and then I'm going to skip these two and just hold down the Shift key and select this last one. So I can now hit S to scale, and I can scale these in, and you can see that it's going to make a star shape. And then if I press the A key to select everything, I can press the F key, and that is going to fill a face in the center. So now we have a star. And actually something that I noticed real quick, if I tab to go back to object mode, I actually modeled this the opposite way around. So I was looking at it on the back instead of the front. So what I need to do is just select this object here. I need to rotate it on the X-axis and rotate it the other way, and then move it back on the Y-axis like that. It is the same on the front and back for the rest of the objects, but this object I just wanted to rotate it back, because if I press 1 on the numpad, that'll take me to the front view. Alright, so I'm going to select the star again, and I will press the tab key to go into edit mode. And I'm going to press E to extrude, just extrude that up, and we're just going to place it about there. And then I want to add a little crease, which is on the front of the star, so I will press the I key, that's going to inset the face, and I'm going to bring it in, place it there. Then I can press the I key again, bring that in a bit more, and place it there. So I can now press the 3 on the top of my keyboard, that'll go to the face select, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key and then select that ring of faces there. And I can press E to extrude, and let's bring it down, and we're just going to place it to about there. And then I can tab to go back to object mode. Now I want to make this star smoother, so with the star selected, you can press Ctrl 2, and that is going to add the subdivision surface. And then right over here on the viewport and render, I'm going to turn this both up to 3 so that it is much smoother, and then using the object context menu, I can shade the object smooth. And then if I tab to go back into edit mode, I want to make the bottom sharper because you can see it's pretty round. So I'm going to press Ctrl R to add a loop cut, and I can left click, and then I want to drag down pretty close, not all the way down, but pretty close, and then left click again. And then I do want to make the star a bit more sharp, so I'm going to press 7 on the numpad for top view, and I'm going to press 1 on the top of my keyboard to go to the vertex select. I'll press A to deselect everything, and then I need to hold down the Z button, and I need to move my mouse over to the wireframe. I'm now going to click and drag, and this is going to add a box select, and I'm just going to box select all the inner vertices, so not the ones out here, just the ones in the center. And I can hold down the Z button and go back to solid view. So I'm now going to hit S to scale, and then I'm going to hit Shift Z to exclude the Z axis, so I can just scale it in and out. And I'm going to scale it down a bit more, not too far, I don't really want it to look kind of stretched, but I just want to bring it in a bit more and then place it there. And I can tab to go back to object mode, and let's press Ctrl S to save. So back in object mode with the star selected, I'll hit S to scale. I'm just going to scale this down so it's much smaller, kind of zoom in here, and then I can press G to grab. You can bring it over on the Y axis, and then I also want to rotate the object, and I want to rotate it on the X axis, and then I can type in 9, 0, and enter to rotate it over by 90 degrees. And then I can press 1 on the numpad for front view. I'm going to scale this down a bit smaller, and then if I press 3 on the numpad for side view, I can press G to grab. I can click with my middle mouse wheel to constrain it to the Y axis, and I'm just going to stick that right there on the very front. Let's press Ctrl S to save, and that's looking very nice. Alright, so the modeling is finished. So I'm now going to add a camera. So I'll press Shift A. Let's go here to camera, and then what you can do is move to wherever you want the camera to be. So I'm going to move my view to about here, and then you can press Ctrl Alt Numpad 0. And Ctrl Alt Numpad 0 is going to bring the camera to where you are. And also, if you click right here to the output properties, I want this to be a square image. So on the resolution X and Y, I'm gonna click and then drag down and then let go, and this way I can change both values at the same time. And I'm gonna use a value of 1920 by 1920. So that's gonna be the resolution of the image, and it is a square image. And then also, if I click right here to the object data properties with the camera selected, I want to turn this focal length here of the camera to 90, and that's kind of going to zoom the camera in, and I think it looks a bit nicer. I'm now going to press G to grab, and then I can double tap the Z key, and that will bring it in and out. I can kind of bring it back here and bring it up. And then I also want to rotate this, so I'll hit R to rotate, and then I can also double tap the R key, and that's going to activate the trackball rotation. And then I can hold down the Shift key to make my movements more sensitive, and I want to bring it up a bit, place it there, and then press G to grab and just bring it down a little bit, and hold down the Shift key to make your movements more sensitive. So something like that. I think I want to bring it back a little bit. Alright, so we are almost ready to do the materials, but before we do the materials, I do want to set up the lighting because I need some nice lighting to preview the materials. So let's click right over here to the world properties, and then right here on the surface, if you go to color and click on the yellow dot there, you can choose environment texture under texture. And then once you've added the environment texture, you can click on open and open up an HDRI. And here's the Christmas Photo Studio 01 that I'm going to be using. So again, links in the description if you'd like to download it, and I'll be downloading the 1K HDR version version from Polyhaven. So just click on that, and then you can click on Open Image. So now if I hold down the Z button and move my mouse up into the rendered view, we're going to get some really nice lighting. I really like all the red colors coming from this HDRI, all the warm colors, and it's going to give some really nice reflections when we add the materials. Now, if you're in Cycles Render, I only want the camera to render what the camera can see. So I'm going to press Control B in the camera, and I can drag a box over the camera and then let go, and that way it'll only render what the camera can see. Now I also want to make the lighting look a bit nicer, so let's go right here to the render properties, and if you open up the color management, make sure the view transform is set to filmic, and on the look here, I'm going to change this to high contrast. So you can see this is going to pop out the colors and make things look more contrasty and saturated. And also I don't want to preview the background, I don't actually want to be able to see the HDRI, so if I open up the film tab right here, I can check mark the transparent button, and that way you can't see the HDRI in the background. And also for anyone out there who is using Blender Eevee, if you are doing this in Eevee, it'll look pretty much exactly the same. It looks great in Eevee, but I would turn on the ambient occlusion and the screen space reflections, and that'll make Eevee look a bit nicer. But I'll be using Cycles, but you can really use whichever render engine you want. It looks very similar in both engines. Alright, so one more thing I want to do before I create the materials, I do want to add a couple of lights on either side. So I'm going to press 7 on the numpad to go to the top view. I can hold down the Z button and go to solid. And then I want to press Shift A, and I'm going to go to light, and I'm going to add an area light. I can bring the area light over, and it is a bit big, so I'm going to scale it down a bit, and I can press 1 on the numpad to go to front view, and I'm going to rotate the light up so that the light is pointed at the ornament. And I can press 7 again to go to top view, 7 on the numpad, and I can rotate this over, and I'm going to bring it back a bit because I kind of want to create 2 rim lights on either side, so I just want to have this pointed kind of on the side of the ornament. And then if you click right here to go to the object data properties, on the shape here of this light, I want to change the shape instead to a rectangle. And then I can drag the X size, and I want to bring it up so it is a bit bigger, and I could bring the Y size up a little bit as well if I wanted to, just to make a nice rim light, so it's going to give some nice lighting on the side there. And then if I press 0 on the numpad, that'll go to the camera view, and I can hold down the Z button and move my mouse up into the rendered view. And for this light, I want to turn the power to 5 so it's not quite as bright. And then on the color here, I'm going to make this a very slight yellowy orangey color. And then I want to have one more light, so I'll press 7 on the numpad to go to top view. I can press Shift D to duplicate, and I want to rotate this light over and just make another light over here. And then for this light, I'm going to take the color, and I'm going to make this kind of a slight blue color. Not super strong blue, but just a very slight blue color. And I'm also going to make it a little bit less strong, so I'll just turn the power to like a 4. So now we have a nice bright light coming over here, and then another blue light coming over here. And it is a little bit hard to see the lights because these materials are just like a blank white material, but once we make it metallic and shiny, you'll definitely be able to see the lights better. So now let's do the materials. So to do the materials, we can click right over here on the shading workspace, and in the shading workspace, I have the shader nodes right here, and then the 3D viewport right here. So I'm going to press 0 on the numpad to go into the camera view, and I can hold down the Z button and move my mouse up into the rendered view so I can actually see the rendered mode. So let's click on this object right here, this little cap object, and we're going to create the first material. So I can click on new here to add a new material, and I can rename this material to gold. And then also I'm going to be using the Node Wrangler add-on in this tutorial to preview the different nodes. So if you don't have the Node Wrangler enabled, you can click on edit and you can go to the preferences. And then over here on the add-ons tab, right up here on the search, you can search for node and just check mark the Node Wrangler add-on so it's built into Blender, and I'll show you how to use it in the video. So you can just close the user preferences. So to start off, I'm going to click on the base color here, and I'm going to make this a bright yellow kind of orange color to make it look like gold. And also here on the metallic value, let's turn this all the way up to 1 so that it is metal. And for now, we can also turn the roughness a bit more down so it is more shiny. And if you want to use the exact same color that I'm using for the gold, if you go here to the hex value, it's going to be a hex value of FF C332. That is the gold color that I'll be using. Now I also want some variation in the roughness to make it look a bit glittery. So I'm going to press Shift A, let's go to the search, and I'm going to search for the Voronoi texture, and let's bring the Voronoi down here. And then we turned on the Node Wrangler add-on, so you can Control Shift and select different nodes, and that is using the Node Wrangler add-on, and it's going to preview the node on the object. And I'm going to Control Shift and select the Voronoi texture twice, and that way we can preview the color. And then also with the Voronoi texture selected, I'm going to press Ctrl T. That is going to add the texture coordinate and mapping, and that's using another feature of the Node Wrangler add-on. And then I don't need the mapping, so I can just click on it and press X to delete it. And I want to use the object coordinate so that the texture is placed on the object more evenly. So let's take the object and we're going to put that into the vector. And then I also want to turn the scale up, and I want to turn the scale up a lot so that there's much more detail. So on the scale value, I'm going to turn this to 3000. So 3000, and now if I zoom in here, you can see that is very detailed. And also right here on the F1, I'm going to instead change this to F2 because F2 is going to give it even more detail. And you can see there's all those little bits of color. So I now want to put this into the roughness so that some parts are more rough and other parts are more shiny. So I'm going to put the color into the roughness, and then I can Control Shift and select the principled shader. Now I want to be able to control how rough and shiny it is. So I'm going to press Shift A, let's go to the search, and I'm going to search for the color ramp, and let's put the color ramp in between the principled shader and the Voronoi. So if the colors are darker, it's going to be more shiny, but if the colors are lighter, it's going to be more rough. So if I click on the white tab here and click on the color, I can make this darker, and you can see it's going to be more shiny. So I'm going to make this kind of like a light gray, and then if I click on the black tab here and click on the color, this one is just going to be kind of like a dark gray so that everything is a little bit more rough. And if you want to use the same exact colors that I'm using, this darker tab here, this is going to be a hex value of 6F, 6F, 6F. And then if you click right here on the lighter color, this one is going to be a hex value of A4, A4, A4. So now you can see it kind of looks like gold. So now what I want to do is add this gold material to a bunch of these other objects. So I can just click on this object here, and then I can click on the drop down and add the gold material. I can also click on the star and click right here on the drop down and add the gold material, and also I can click on this ring here and click on the drop down and add the gold. Now if you zoom in here, you can see that the size is actually different on some objects. This object, this star object, you can see it's super small, there's tons of detail, but then over here the amount of Voronoi detail is much bigger. And this is because we need to apply the scale values of the object, because this star, it started out as being really big, but we scaled it way down. So I just want to apply the scale of all the objects. So let's go back over here to the layout to do this, and I'm going to hold down the Z button and go to solid view. And then I just want to press B for the box select, and I'm just going to drag a box around all of these objects and let go. But then I actually don't want to select the lights and camera, so I'm going to press B again for the box select, but this time I'm going to click and drag with my middle mouse wheel and then let go to deselect all those objects. And then I want to have an active object, so I'm just going to hold down the Shift key and select one of these objects so that it has a yellow outline there, and so we have an active object. So now what I can do is press Ctrl A, and I want to apply the scale. So that way this is now the object's new default scale. So I can now go right back here to the shading tab, and if I press the 0 on the numpad to go into the camera view and kind of zoom in here, you can see that the Voronoi has the same scale between all of these objects. Let's press Ctrl S to save. So I now want to select this gold ring, which is around the center of the ornament, and I want to make this material slightly different. So right up here on the gold material, I'm going to click on this button right here, and this will duplicate the material but keep the same data. So now it says gold 001. I'm going to rename this to gold ring because it's the ring around the center. So what I want to do is add some rings which are going around this ring, and we're going to put that into the normal to give it some bump. So I'm going to press Shift A, let's go to the search, and I'm going to search for the wave texture, and let's put the wave texture underneath the Voronoi. And then to preview it, I'm going to Control Shift and select the wave texture. And then I want to use the object coordinates, so let's take the object from the texture coordinate, and I'm going to put that into the vector. And then right here on the X, I'm going to instead change this to Z. So you can see that this wave texture is now having a white line and then a black line and then another white line. But I want to have much more lines. So on the scale here, I'm going to turn this way up to like a 35 so that there are much more of those lines. So I now want to put this into the normal to give it some bump. So let's put the color into the normal. And then I can Control Shift and select the principled shader. Now there are some weird shading issues, and that's because we need to convert the color data into normal data that the shader can use. So I'm going to press Shift A. Let's go to the search, and I'm going to search for the bump node, and let's put the bump node in between the wave texture and the normal. And then the color can go into the height value. And so now the bump node is going to convert that color data into normal data. So you can see it actually looks like it's popping out, but it is a bit too strong. So I'm going to turn the strength way down to just like a 0.5 so it is less strong. Now I also want to change the shape of it, because if you zoom in here, you can see there's kind of like some sharp edges, and it's sharp on the front and then it's sharp in the creases. So to fix this, I'm going to press Shift A. Let's go to the search, and I'm going to search for the RGB curves, and I want to put the RGB curves after the wave texture. So with the RGB curves, I can now change the shape of this line, and that's going to actually be the shape of the bump. So I'm going to click and drag and bring this dot down, and then I can click here to add another dot, and I'm going to bring this one kind of in the center of the grid, and then I can drag this one down. And then I want to bring them both slightly up a little bit, so I'm going to bring these both up kind of like that. And then I actually want to make this a bit less strong because it's still too strong. So on the strength, I'm just going to turn it to like a 0.2 on the bump strength. And then I can drag this down and we can change the shape of it. So I'm actually going to bring this way down. And so now you can see that it is going to be much more smooth. And there we go. So now you can see we just have that nice little detail there on the ring. So I'm now going to click on the main object, and we're going to create another material, and this is going to be a red and blue material. So let's click on new here to add a new material, and I can call this ornament. So for this one, I'm going to press Shift A. Let's go to the search, and I'm going to start by adding a wave texture. Let's put the wave texture here, and then I can Control Shift and select the wave texture to preview it. And then also with the wave texture selected, I can press Control T. That'll add the texture coordinate and mapping, and I just want to use the object coordinates. So let's put the object into the vector of the wave texture, and I can select the mapping and press X to delete it. And then I want the lines to be going in the opposite direction. So on the X here, I'm going to change this instead to Z. And then I also want to make the scale much smaller because I just want to have one big black line. So I'm going to turn the scale to a 0.5, just a 0.5. So now you can see it's black in the center, and then as it goes up and down, it gets lighter. So basically what I'm trying to create is a pattern which is going up and down. So it's kind of going to be a squiggly line. So I want to create another texture, and we're going to mix that with the wave texture. So I can press Shift A, let's go to the search, and I'm going to search for a gradient texture, and let's put this underneath the wave texture. And then the object can go into the vector. And then I can Control Shift and select the gradient texture to preview it. Now I want to click on the linear here, and I instead want this to be set to radial because I want to make some lines which are going up and down. Now if I go right over here, you can see it starts out as black, and then as it goes around it gets lighter. And so instead I want it to get darker and then get lighter, and I want it to be a smooth transition. So I'll press Shift A, let's go to the search, and I'm going to search for the math node, and let's put the math node after the gradient texture. And then if I click on the add here, under the rounding, I can change this to the ping pong. So this way, now it is black over here, and then it gets lighter as it goes over here. And I will leave the scale at 0.5. Now I want to make much more of these dark lines, so I'm going to click on the ping pong, and I can press Shift D to duplicate it, and let's stick it here before the first one. And then I want to click on the ping pong, and I'm instead going to change this to multiply under functions. So now I can turn the value up, and it's going to make more and more of those lines. And I want to turn the multiply to 12 so that there will be 12 lines. You can change this to whatever you want, but do make sure that it is an even number, because if it's like 12.1 or 12.2, you can see that now there's that sharp line right there. So I'm going to set this to the 12. So I now want to mix this with the wave texture. So I'm going to bring the principled back, and I'm going to press Shift A. I'm going to go to the search, and I'm going to search for the mix node. And in older versions of Blender, this is the mix RGB node. So if for some reason you don't just see the mix node, you can add the mix RGB node. And then right here, if I click on float, I want to change this to color so we can use color values. And then on the mix RGB node, there's going to be color 1 and color 2, but in the newer version of Blender, that's been changed to A and B. But the node works exactly the same. So I'm going to use the mix RGB to mix two colors together. So I can take the ping pong and we're going to put that into B, or color 2, and then I want to take the wave texture color and I want to put that into A, or color 1. And then I can Control Shift and select the mix to preview it. So I can now drag this factor, and you can see the factor is just going to blend between only using A or only using B. Now I want to make this much more contrasty, so I'm going to press Shift A. I'm going to go to the search, and I'm going to search for the color ramp, and let's put the color ramp here after the mix. And then if I click on the linear here, I can change this to constant. So now that it's set to constant, I want to bring this white tab over, and I'm going to bring it out here so that it's kind of close to the black tab. And then I can also drag this factor. So you can drag the factor to change that pattern, and you can see we have this really cool sharp pattern. And then you can drag the white tab to change where those little triangles are. So you could keep it like that if you want to. I do think that looks pretty cool. That could be a really cool pattern on the ornament, but I instead want to round the edges. So to round the edges, I can press Shift A. Let's go to the search, and I can search for the RGB curves, and let's put the RGB curves here after the ping pong. So we can use the RGB curves to control the shape of it. So I'm going to click to add a dot here, and then I'm going to drag this dot up here, and then this one over here, I can drag this down to the bottom. And you can see that this shape is going to determine the shape of that round part. And then I want to drag the bottom tabs up here because I don't want the center there to be super sharp, or the parts which are going up there, you can see it's very sharp. So I'm going to drag these two little dots up here so it's not quite as sharp. And then I'm going to click here in the center and drag this down, and that way it'll be a bit more smooth. And also click here in the center and drag this down, and that way it'll be more smooth. So where this ends right here, it's going to be the next one right over here. So by adding these two dots here and rounding that over, you can see it's going to be much more smooth. So I can drag this up and down to change that if I want to. Drag this up and down. I can also drag this factor to change the strength of it. And then also here on the color ramp, I can drag the white tab. So there's a bunch of different settings that you can change to customize it. So I want to take the factor and I want to turn this way down to a 0.03. So a 0.03, and now you can see we have this nice little wave. And then I also want to drag the black tab out and maybe drag the white tab back a bit. And then I also want to add another white tab. So I'm going to hold down the Control key and click right here in the color ramp to add another tab. And I'm going to drag the white tab over. So now we have a white tab, then we have a black tab, and then we have another white tab. And so because we have 3 tabs, it's actually going to make 2 different waves. So I can now just kind of drag this over and drag this back and kind of just make the waves how I want. And then of course you can change the factor if you want to make it look different. I actually think that looks really cool. Or you could drag the factor back a bit. That also looks pretty cool. Or you could also drag the RGB curves to kind of change how strong that is. Now back here on the color ramp, I do want to change the colors because I don't want it to be just white and black. So I'm going to click on the black tab, and on the black tab, I'm going to click on the color, and I want to make this a bright color, and then I want to make it kind of like a red color. Not super saturated, but pretty saturated, so something like that. And the hex value that I'll be using for this red color is going to be FF4B47. And then these 2 white tabs, I want to be the same blue color. So I'm going to click here on this color. I can click on this, and I'm going to make this kind of like a light blue, something like that. And the hex value that I'll be using for this blue color is going to be 629CFF. And then I actually want to copy this value and put it on the white one, or if you wanted to, you could make the white one any color that you want if you want to do like yellow or green or something. But what I'm going to do is click on the blue tab, and then I'm going to hover my mouse over the blue color and press Control C, and that is going to copy that color. I can then click on the white tab, and with my mouse hovered over the value, I can press Control V, and that is going to paste it. So now we have red and blue. So I can now take the color ramp color, and I want to put that into the base color of the principled shader, and I can Control Shift and select the principled shader to preview it. So there we go, we now have a really cool pattern there. And then also let's turn the roughness down a bit so it's a bit more shiny. And to make it look metal, we can turn the metallic value all the way up to 1. So that is looking really cool. Let's press Ctrl S to save. Now I also want to use the same roughness texture that we used on the gold. So what I'm going to do is click on any of these gold materials, and then I'm going to click and drag to box select all these nodes. And make sure you hold down the shift key and select one of the nodes so that there is an active node selected. Then I can press Ctrl C, and that's going to copy all the nodes, and I can then click back on the other material, and with my mouse here in the shader editor I can press Ctrl V, and that's going to paste the nodes. And I want to bring the nodes down here, and then I can take the color ramp color and I can just put that into the roughness. And so this way this blue and red material is going to have the same roughness. And then just one more thing that I forgot to add to the material, I want to put this color ramp into the normal to just give it a little bit of bump. So I'm going to press Shift A, let's go to the search, and I'm going to search for the bump node, and we can put the bump node right down here. And then I want to take the color ramp color, and I want to put that into the height value, and then I want the normal to be going into the normal of the principled shader. So now if I zoom in there, you can see it's just going to give a tiny little shiny bit there on the edge, and it just looks like it has a tiny little bit of bump. And then I will also just turn the strength down to 0.5 so it's a bit less strong. So the materials are finished, so I can just go right back over here to the layout, and I can press the 0 on the numpad to go into the camera view. Let's press Ctrl S to save, and then I'm just going to quickly go over a few render settings. So on the resolution, I'm going to render this by 1920 by 1920. I think that is pretty good. And also if I go up here to the render properties and open up the sampling, I'm going to use 100 samples. 100 samples will be plenty to get a nice render. And also you could totally use Eevee if you want to. So if I go into the rendered mode, Eevee looks pretty much exactly the same. You can see once the materials load up, this is the ornament in Eevee, so it looks really nice. I'm just going to use cycles because I want it to be very realistic, but you could totally use Eevee if you want to. So just press Ctrl S to save, and then you can click here on render and click on render image, or use the shortcut key of F12. And the render finished. So I'm now going to do some compositing to make the image look really nice. So let's click right over here on the compositing tab, and then I also want to click on use nodes so I can use the compositing nodes. I'm also going to click and drag to make the timeline smaller because I don't really need it. So the first thing that I want to add is an alpha over node so that we have something in the background. So I can press Shift A, let's go to the search, and I'm going to search for the alpha over, and let's put the alpha over in between the render layers in composite. And then because we turned on the Node Wrangler add-on, I can hold down the Control and Shift key and select the alpha over, and that is going to add the viewer node. And the viewer node will allow us to preview everything in the background. And also make sure that you have the backdrop button turned on so you can see what's in the background. And then you can press the V key to zoom the background out, and you can press Alt V to zoom the background in. Now you can see that it's just white right now, and that is because I actually want to take the render layers image and I want to put that into the bottom image. And then this top image, that is going to be the background. So I can change this to whatever background I want. So I could just make it like a blue color. But instead of it being a single color, I want to have like a cool gradient so that it's kind of a different color kind of in the center, and I want to make it kind of a lighter color in the center and then darker as it goes out. So what I'm going to do is press Shift A, I'm going to go to the search, and I'm going to search for the ellipse mask. And let's put the ellipse mask right here. And then I can Control Shift and select the ellipse mask to preview it. And you can see that the ellipse mask is going to be a circle. And I can drag the width and height, and I can also hold down the Shift key as I drag the width and height to make my movements more sensitive. And I want to make this basically a big circle. And then I actually want to Control Shift and select the alpha over so I can actually preview the ornament. And I want to put the ellipse mask into this top image so I can actually see it. And I want to make this ellipse mask a little bit smaller than the ornament. And I also want to drag it over on the X and Y, and I want to put it pretty much behind the ornament. So something like that so you pretty much can't see it. So I'm now going to blur this to kind of make a nice gradient in the background. So I'm going to press Shift A, let's go to the search, and I can search for the blur node, and let's put the blur node after the ellipse mask. And then I can change the X and Y to blur it. So I'm going to click and then drag down and then let go to change both values at the same time. And I'm going to type in 500 so that we can blur it just by 500. So you can now see we have that white with the dark blue. And actually I want to make it a bit smaller, so on the width and height here I'm just going to make that a bit smaller so you can't see it quite as much. So something like that is pretty good. But then I don't want it to be white and black. I do want to make it kind of blue colors, so I can press Shift A. Let's go to the search, and I can search for a color ramp, and let's put the color ramp after the blur to change the colors. So then on this white tab here, I'm going to click on the color, and I'm going to make this kind of like a light blue. And then on this black tab here, I can click on the color, and for this one, I'm going to make it kind of a dark blue. And if you want to use the same hex values that I'm using, the light blue is going to be 7495D9. And then here on the dark blue, this color is going to be 0C1F43. And also if you want to see the light colors a bit better, you can click on this color right here and you can drag this over and it's going to make the light colors a bit brighter. So something like that is pretty good. I think it will bring it over just a little. All right, and then just a couple more things that I want to do. I want to denoise the image so that it is smoother, so I'm going to press Shift A, go to the search, and I'm going to search for the denoise node, and let's put the denoise node after the render layers. And on the accurate here, I can just change it to fast so it goes faster. And if you're using Blender Eevee, there isn't really going to be much noise, but in cycles there is a little bit of noise. So that looks much nicer. And then the last thing that I want to do is add some glare, so I'm going to press Shift A. Let's go to the search, and I'm going to search for the glare node, and I can put the glare node after the denoise. And I'm going to have two types of glare. So the first one that I want to have is streaks, and that's going to give a really cool star effect. And also on the streaks amount here, I'm going to turn this up to 6 so that there are 6 of those streaks. And also, if you take the fade and turn the fade down, it's going to be a little bit more subtle because those streaks are a little bit strong. So I'm going to turn that down just a little bit, maybe to like a 0.85 or a 0.8, so it is a bit more subtle. And then I do want to add one more type of glare. So with this glare node selected, I can press Shift D to duplicate it, and let's stick it right here after the first one. And on the streaks here, I want to change this one instead to fog glow. And this is going to make a nice glow effect. So we'll just wait for that to load up, and you can see that is very nice. And also here on the glare, on this streaks glare, I think I might turn the fade down just so that it's a little bit less visible and a little bit harder to see. So there we have it. There is the finished image. So to save this image, you can press the F11 key, and that is going to go to the render result. Now I want to preview what the viewer node can see, the compositing nodes. So if you click here on the drop down, I can choose the viewer node, and that'll preview what the compositing can see. And then I just want to save this image. So to save the image, you can click on image and click on save as. And I'll just save this as stylized Christmas ornaments.png, and I'll click on save as. So there we have it. There is the stylized Christmas ornament. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you for watching. And if you'd like to help support me and my YouTube channel, you can also purchase the project files on my Gumroad store in my Patreon page with the links in the description. And if you'd like to watch more of my Christmas themed tutorials, then definitely check out my Christmas tutorial playlist, links in the description. And also definitely check out my Geometry Node Christmas lights with the link in the description, and you can also watch the Geometry Node Christmas lights tutorial as well if you'd like to create it yourself. So I hope you enjoyed this, thank you for watching, and Merry Christmas.